Ethan Cole used to believe that the strongest bonds in life didn't need constant attention. They simply existed, steady and unshakable. Friendship, love, he thought they were built on something deeper than doubt. It was a quiet kind of faith, the kind that doesn't question itself until something forces it to. For Ethan, that something didn't arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, hidden inside moments that once felt ordinary. Before any of that, there was Liam Carter. Ethan had known Liam long enough to mistake familiarity for certainty. They met during their early college days, when everything felt temporary except the connections that formed under shared struggles and late-night conversations. Liam had a way of filling space without effort, his confidence, his humor, his refusal to take anything too seriously. Where Ethan was measured and observant, Liam was impulsive and magnetic. It worked. People were drawn to Liam, but he always came back to Ethan, as if their friendship anchored something in him that the rest of the world couldn't. Over time, that dynamic became routine. Ethan trusted him not because he had to, but because it had never occurred to him not to. "You think too much," Liam would often say, clapping him on the shoulder with a grin. "Relax for once." Ethan would shake his head, but he'd smile anyway. That was just how they were. Then there was Ava Bennett. Ethan met her in a way that didn't feel extraordinary at first. There were no dramatic first impressions, no immediate certainty that she would matter more than anyone else. She was quiet, thoughtful, with a presence that didn't demand attention but held it once noticed. What drew Ethan in wasn't anything obvious. It was the way she listened, really listened, like every word mattered, even the ones he didn't think were important enough to say. Their conversations stretched easily, without effort. Where Liam filled silence, Ava understood it. She didn't rush to respond, didn't interrupt, didn't try to turn every moment into something louder than it needed to be. It felt different. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan didn't feel like he had to hold parts of himself back. Their relationship grew steadily, without the chaos that often defined early connections. It wasn't intense in a way that burned quickly. It was steady in a way that felt like it could last. Ava trusted him, and Ethan found himself trusting her just as deeply. Eventually, their worlds overlapped. Liam met Ava casually at first, through Ethan, during one of their usual meetups. As expected, Liam's charm surfaced immediately. He greeted her with the same ease he showed everyone else, slipping in a conversation like he had known her for years. "So you're the one who finally got Ethan to talk more than 5 words at a time." Liam joked, flashing a grin. Ava smiled politely, glancing at Ethan before responding. "He talks when it matters." Liam laughed, clearly amused. "I like her already." Ethan didn't think much of it at the time. That was just Liam, friendly, outgoing, effortlessly engaging. There was no reason to question it first. Everything blended smoothly. The three of them, along with Noah Hayes and occasionally Maya Collins, formed a small circle that felt comfortable, balanced. Conversations flowed easily, laughter came naturally, and there were no visible fractures. But even in the most stable structures, there are small shifts that go unnoticed. Until they don't. Ethan began to catch them in passing. It was subtle. The way Liam directed certain jokes toward Ava more than others. The way his tone changed slightly when speaking to her, lighter, more deliberate. It wasn't inappropriate, not enough to stand out on its own, but it was consistent. Ava didn't encourage it, at least not obviously. She responded the same way she did with everyone, polite, composed, occasionally amused. Yet there were moments when her reactions lingered a fraction longer than Ethan expected, moments where her attention stayed on Liam just a second too late. Ethan noticed, but he dismissed it just as quickly. Because trust doesn't leave room for suspicion, not when it's still intact. "You're overthinking again," Liam said one evening, catching Ethan watching them during a group conversation. "It's just a joke." Ethan hadn't even realized his thoughts were visible. "Yeah," he replied, forcing a small smile. "I know." And he did note at least he thought he did. Days passed, then weeks, and life continued without any clear disruption. Ethan and Ava still spent time together, still shared conversations that felt genuine. Nothing about their relationship seemed broken. But something felt different. Not in a way he could explain, and not in a way he felt justified addressing. It was in the pauses, the brief moments when Ava seemed distracted, as if her thoughts were somewhere else before she brought them back. The way she sometimes hesitated before responding to simple questions, like she was weighing her words more carefully than before. Ethan told himself it was nothing. Everyone gets distracted. Everyone has off days. And Liam? Liam remained exactly who he had always been, confident, present, unchanged on the surface. But Ethan began to notice how often Liam showed up unexpectedly when Ava was around. How easily conversations shifted toward shared jokes that Ethan didn't always fully understand. It wasn't exclusion, not outright, just something slightly out of alignment. Still, Ethan stayed quiet because nothing had actually happened. There were no crossed lines, no explicit moments that justified confrontation. Only fragments of doubt that felt too small to give a voice. And so he let them remain unspoken. One evening, as Ethan and Ava walked together after dinner, the city quieter than usual, he glanced at her, searching for something he couldn't quite define. "You've been a little distant lately," he said gently. Ava looked at him, surprised, then shook her head with a faint smile. "I haven't. You're imagining things." Maybe he was. Ethan nodded, accepting the answer because it was easier than questioning it further. Because questioning it would mean admitting that something might be wrong, and he wasn't ready to do that. Not yet. Not when everything still looked the same on the surface. Not when trust still felt easier than doubt. But as they continued walking, side by side yet strangely disconnected in that moment, Ethan couldn't ignore the quiet thought that settled at the back of his mind. Sometimes the first sign that something is about to break is how normal everything tries to feel right before it does. The night it happened didn't feel important at first. It was supposed to be simple, just another evening where nothing changed and everything stayed comfortably the same. Ethan Cole had always believed that routine meant safety, and safety meant trust. That belief followed him as he stepped into Liam Carter's apartment, greeted by the familiar hum of music and the faint scent of coffee that never quite left the place. Liam was already there, sprawled across the couch like he owned not just the room, but the mood itself. He grinned the moment he saw Ethan, that same effortless confidence that had drawn people to him for years. "Took you long enough," Liam said, tossing a cushion aside. "Thought you bailed." Ethan shook his head lightly, setting his keys on the table. "You know I don't do that." Ava Bennett appeared moments later from the kitchen, her smile softer, quieter, but just as warm. "Hey," she said, stepping closer to Ethan. Her presence grounded him instantly, the way it always had. For a moment, everything felt right, predictable in the best way. Noah Hayes was there too, leaning against the wall with his usual observant silence, offering Ethan a nod that felt more like understanding than greeting. Maya Collins had texted earlier that she wouldn't make it, something about work, which left the group smaller than usual. Intimate, almost, they settled into conversation easily. Liam dominated most of it, telling stories, exaggerating details, making Ava laugh a little longer than Ethan expected. At first, Ethan didn't think much of it. Liam had always been like that, loud, magnetic, impossible to ignore. Ava laughed with everyone. That was just who she was. Still, there was something different in the rhythm tonight. Ethan noticed in the way Liam leaned a little closer when he spoke to Ava, how his jokes seemed tailored specifically for her reaction. Ava didn't pull away, but she didn't lean in either. She hovered somewhere in between, as if unsure where the line actually was. "You remember that trip we took last summer?" Liam said suddenly, glancing at Ava instead of Ethan. "Ethan nearly got us lost for hours." Ethan frowned slightly. "That's not even true." Ava laughed, but her eyes flickered briefly toward Ethan, searching his reaction before returning to Liam. "I can see it happening," she teased. "See?" Liam pointed at her like he'd proven something. "She gets it. It was a small thing. Barely anything." But Ethan felt it settle somewhere uneasy inside him. Like a quiet shift he couldn't quite name, as the night stretched on. The conversation thinned into smaller pockets of silence. Noah eventually excused himself to take a call outside, leaving the three of them in a space that suddenly felt more confined than before. Liam stood up, stretching lazily. "I've got something to show you guys," he said, disappearing briefly into his room. Ethan leaned back, exhaling slowly. "He's in one of his moods tonight." Ava smiled faintly. "He's always in one of his moods." There was something unreadable in her tone, but before Ethan could ask, Liam returned, holding a long measuring ruler, the kind used for design work. He twirled it casually in his hand, like it was just another prop in his endless performance. "Look what I found," Liam said, grinning. 12 inches of pure precision. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Why do you even have that?" "Because," Liam replied, stepping closer, his tone playful but edged with something harder to define. "You never know when you need to prove a point." At first, it seemed like another joke. Liam had always been dramatic, always pushing things just far enough to get a reaction. Ethan expected the moment to pass like all the others. Awkward for a second, then forgotten. But it didn't. Liam moved closer to Ava, holding the ruler out as if comparing it against something invisible, his gestures exaggerated, unnecessary. Ava let out a small, uncertain laugh, glancing briefly at Ethan again, but she didn't step away. Liam, what are you doing? Ethan asked, his voice calm but firmer now. Relax, Liam said lightly. It's just a joke. But the joke didn't land. Not the way it was supposed to. There was a tension in the air now, something heavier than humor, something that pressed against Ethan's chest without warning. Liam didn't stop that he crossed a line, not in a way that was loud or explosive, but in a way that was unmistakably wrong. His actions, though still masked in humor, carried an undercurrent of disrespect that couldn't be ignored. It wasn't about the object in his hand anymore. It was about intention, about boundaries being tested in plain sight. Ethan felt the shift instantly. His mind struggled to catch up with what his instincts already understood. This wasn't harmless. This wasn't just Liam being Liam. There was something deliberate in it, something that challenged Ethan without saying a word. All right, that's enough, Ethan said, standing up now. Liam paused, but only for a second. Then he smirked, lowering the ruler slightly. You're taking this too seriously. Ava stayed quiet. That silence hit harder than anything Liam had done. Ethan looked at her, expecting, needing some kind of reaction. A protest, a boundary, anything that would anchor the moment back into something normal. But Ava only looked down briefly, her expression unreadable, before offering a small, dismissive shrug. It's nothing, she said softly. Nothing. The word echoed in Ethan's mind, hollow and unconvincing. Noah re-entered the room just then, his presence breaking the tension slightly, but not enough to erase it. He looked between them, sensing immediately that something had shifted. Everything good? Noah asked. Yeah, Liam answered quickly, tossing the ruler onto the table as if it had never mattered. Just messing around. Ethan didn't respond. He sat back down slowly, but the ease from earlier was gone. In its place was a quiet storm of thoughts he couldn't organize. Confusion tangled with frustration, and beneath it all was something sharper, something closer to betrayal, though he wasn't ready to call it that yet. The conversation resumed, but it felt forced now, like everyone was pretending not to notice the crack that had formed. Ethan barely heard the words anymore. His focus drifted, replaying the moment over and over, searching for an explanation that made sense. But every version led back to the same conclusion. Something had crossed the line, and no one seemed willing to admit it. When the night finally ended, Ethan stepped outside into the cool air, hoping it would clear his head. It didn't, because the question stayed with him, louder now than before. If it was really nothing, then why did it feel like everything had just changed? The days that followed felt uneven for Evelyn Carter, as if the rhythm she and Liam Brooks once shared had slipped half a step out of time. Their conversations continued, but something invisible stood between them now. She laughed when he joked, replied when he messaged, yet the ease she once felt was gone. Every word passed through a quiet filter of caution she didn't remember building. Liam acted as though nothing had changed. He sent good morning texts, shared random stories, and occasionally teased her about being too serious. Evelyn responded politely, but she noticed how often she hesitated before opening his messages. The anticipation that once felt exciting now carried a faint tension. One evening, Liam called unexpectedly. His voice was bright, energetic. You've been quiet lately, he said. Everything okay? I'm fine, Evelyn replied, choosing her words carefully. Just busy. He laughed lightly. You used to tell me everything. Feels like you're pulling away. The accusation caught her off guard because it felt partly true. She wanted to explain that she didn't know how to move past what had happened, but every time she tried to bring it up, the words felt too heavy. Instead, she changed the subject, and Liam followed her lead without pressing further. After the call ended, Evelyn stared at the ceiling, frustrated with herself. She hated conflict, yet avoiding it left her feeling dishonest. She needed someone who would listen without judgment, someone outside the relationship. She opened her messages and scrolled until she found Noah Hayes. Noah had been a quiet presence in her life for months, an online friend who checked in occasionally, never demanding attention but always thoughtful. Their conversations were simple and calm, the opposite of the emotional intensity she felt with Liam. She hesitated before typing, then sent a short message asking if he was awake. His reply came quickly. Yeah, everything okay? The question made her throat tighten. She realized how much she needed someone to ask without expectation. They talked for hours. Evelyn didn't describe details. She only explained that something had happened during a call with Liam that left her uncomfortable and confused. Noah didn't interrupt. He didn't rush to defend or criticize. He simply listened. You don't have to ignore your feelings just because someone else thinks it's normal, Noah said gently. His words settled heavily in her chest. She hadn't realized how much she needed permission to trust her own reaction. Over the next few days, Evelyn noticed herself messaging Noah more often. Their conversations felt safe, grounded in everyday things rather than emotional highs. She laughed without pressure, shared small worries, and felt heard in a way that calmed her racing thoughts. Meanwhile, Liam grew more inconsistent. Sometimes he flooded her with attention. Other times he disappeared for hours without explanation. When he returned, he acted overly charming, as if compensating for something she couldn't name. One night, during a late conversation, Liam mentioned he was exhausted from too many calls lately. The comment struck her as odd. Too many calls? She asked. He paused briefly. Yeah, friends, work stuff. The hesitation lingered in her mind after they hung up. It wasn't enough to accuse him of anything, but it planted a small seed of doubt. The discovery came by accident. Evelyn was scrolling through social media when a familiar username caught her attention, someone Liam had mentioned casually before. Curiosity nudged her to look closer. A short post appeared on the screen, vague but suggestive, talking about a wild late-night call and laughing about someone being shocked by it. Her stomach dropped. The details weren't explicit, but the tone felt painfully familiar. The timing matched the night that had unsettled her so deeply. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the comments below, one of them teasingly mentioning Liam's name. For a moment, Evelyn stared at the screen, unwilling to accept what it implied. The private moment she had struggled to understand suddenly seemed less personal, less meaningful, like something repeated without thought. She felt foolish for believing it had been spontaneous, a sign of closeness. Instead, it looked like a pattern. Her chest tightened as realization settled in. The discomfort she felt hadn't been about shyness or misunderstanding. It had been about trust. She closed the app and sat silently, her thoughts spiraling. Had he done this with others? Was she just another person he wanted to impress? The questions came faster than answers. She called Sophie Lane. The moment Sophie heard her voice, she knew something was wrong. Evelyn explained everything: the awkward call, the way Liam brushed it off, and what she had just seen online. Sophie listened quietly before speaking. Ev, if something made you uncomfortable, that alone matters. But if he's doing the same thing with other people, that's not respect. Evelyn swallowed hard. Maybe I'm overreacting. No, Sophie said firmly. You're finally paying attention to how you feel. After the call, Evelyn sat in silence, replaying the past few weeks. She saw the small warning signs she had ignored. The teasing that pushed boundaries, the way Liam dismissed her hesitation, the inconsistency she had excused as busyness. Each memory shifted slightly, revealing a version of him she hadn't wanted to see. Later that night, Liam texted her, "Miss you." Call. She stared at the message for a long time. Part of her wanted to answer, to pretend everything was fine. Another part, the quieter, steadier voice growing inside her, told her she deserved clarity. Instead of replying immediately, she opened her chat with Noah. She didn't ask for advice this time. She just typed, "I think I need to face something I've been avoiding." Noah responded with a simple message. "Whatever happens, be honest with yourself." Evelyn breathed deeply, feeling the truth of those words settle inside her. She realized she wasn't just hurt. She was disappointed in how much she had ignored to keep things comfortable. Her phone buzzed again. Liam calling this time. She watched the screen light up, her reflection staring back at her. For the first time, she didn't rush to answer. Instead, she let the call ring out, her heart steadying as she made a quiet decision. She wasn't ready to talk yet, but she knew the conversation was coming. The silence between Ethan Cole and Ava Bennett did not break all at once. It eroded slowly, like something already weakened long before either of them admitted it. After her quiet confession, the room felt smaller, as if the truth had taken up all the space that honesty once filled. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The weight of what he had seen, and what Ava had failed to deny, was enough. "So that's it?" he asked, his tone even, though his chest felt anything but steady. "You just found someone else to understand you better?" Ava shook her head quickly, stepping closer. "It's not like that, Ethan. I didn't replace you." But the words sounded incomplete, as if even she didn't fully believe them. "You already did," Ethan replied quietly. The certainty in his voice left little room for argument, yet Ava tried anyway. "I was confused. Liam just, he listens differently. It doesn't mean I don't what?" Ethan cut in, not harshly, but firmly enough to stop her. "Don't care? Don't feel anything? Because from where I'm standing, it feels like you made space for him by taking it away from me." Ava's expression tightened, her defenses rising in the absence of a better explanation. "You're making it sound worse than it is." Ethan let out a slow breath, his patience thinning not from anger, but from clarity. "Then explain it in a way that makes it better." She couldn't. That silence, heavier than any argument, stretched between them until it became clear there was nothing left to salvage in that moment. Whatever connection they had built had already begun to unravel, thread by thread, long before Ethan saw the messages. "I think you should go," Ethan said finally. Ava looked at him, searching for hesitation, for any sign that he didn't mean it. But there was none, only a quiet resolve she hadn't seen before. "Ethan, please," he said, softer now, but no less certain. She nodded slowly, as if understanding had arrived too late to change anything. Without another word, she picked up her things and left, the door closing behind her with a finality that echoed longer than the sound itself. For a while, Ethan didn't move. He stood in the same place, staring at nothing in particular, letting the reality settle in fully. It wasn't just Ava he had lost. It was the version of his life that included her without doubt, without questions, and Liam Carter. That name lingered differently now, sharper, more deliberate. Ethan didn't reach out immediately. He didn't trust himself to speak without letting frustration take over. But by the next day, the need for closure outweighed the desire to avoid confrontation. They met in the same apartment where everything had first shifted. Liam looked as relaxed as ever, though his eyes flickered briefly when Ethan stepped inside. "You look serious," he said, attempting a casual tone that didn't quite land. Ethan didn't sit. "I saw the messages." Liam's smile faded, not entirely, but enough to reveal the calculation beneath it. And I want to hear from you," Ethan said. "What exactly do you think you were doing?" Liam leaned back against the counter, crossing his arms. "We were talking. That's all." Ethan studied him for a moment, searching for something, remorse, guilt, anything that suggested he understood the line he had crossed. He found none. "You knew she was with me," Ethan said. Liam shrugged lightly. "People talk, Ethan. It happens. That's your excuse?" "It's not an excuse," Liam replied, his tone sharpening slightly. "It's just not as dramatic as you're making it." Ethan felt something shift again, but this time it wasn't confusion. It was clarity settling firmly into place. "You don't think this matters," he said. Liam hesitated for the briefest second, then looked away. "I think you're overreacting." That was enough. Ethan nodded once, slowly, as if confirming something to himself rather than responding to Liam. "You know what the worst part is?" he said. "It's not even what you did. It's how easy it was for you." Liam didn't answer. "You didn't hesitate," Ethan continued. "You didn't think about what it would cost. You just did it." "That's not fair," Liam muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. "Neither is this," Ethan replied. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was conclusive. Ethan turned toward the door, pausing only briefly. "You were my friend," he said, not with anger, but with a quiet finality that carried far more weight. Then he left. The days that followed were quieter than Ethan expected. Not peaceful, but not chaotic either. There was a stillness to them, as if his life had been stripped down to something simpler, even if it felt emptier at first. No messages from AV and no calls from Liam. Just space.t first. That space felt unbearable. It echoed with everything that had been lost. Conversations, routines, shared moments that now felt distant and incomplete. But gradually, something else began to take its place. Perspective. Ethan started to see things more clearly, not just what had happened, but how it had happened. The small signs he had ignored, the moments he had dismissed because he trusted too easily, too completely. Trust, he realized, wasn't just about believing others. It was also about recognizing when something didn't feel right and not silencing that instinct for the sake of comfort. One evening, as he sat alone, his phone lit up with a message. Ava Duddy stared at the screen for a long moment before opening it. "I'm sorry," it read. "I didn't understand what I was doing until it was too late." Ethan read the words carefully, not rushing to respond, not letting emotion override thought. For the first time, he didn't feel the urge to fix things, because some things weren't meant to be fixed. They were meant to be understood and left behind. He set the phone down without replying, not out of anger, but out of acceptance. Outside, the world moved on as it always did, unchanged by the quiet endings happening within it. And as Ethan sat there, no longer searching for answers that had already revealed themselves, he understood something with a clarity he hadn't known before. Real love doesn't make you question your place in someone's life. And real friendship doesn't make you feel like you have to compete for it. Some losses don't break you. They show you exactly where you were never meant to stay.